It is definitely my favorite beat 'em up, just in general. It's a really cool game. There's so much to it, right? It's like lots of personality. Music's really cool. Characters are very likable, and again, just it's loads of fun. Like hits all the notes. Plus, there's tech to dig out. So it's like that's cool. It's like actual juggle combos and stuff. I remember when I was just like the game had just come out. It was barely a week old. And one of the earliest complaints about the game was that it just felt, to a lot of people, it just felt mashy and limited, quote unquote. You couldn't do much. And I was like playing it, and I was like on day 2 or 3. And I'm just like, I'm reading those reviews, and I'm like, what copy of the game are you guys playing? They're like, there's a lot in here. What's going on? So then I started like actually like figuring out tech and like actually unearthing stuff about the game and the system, and like finding all these juggle combos and glitches and stuff like that. And like legitimately people were like mind blown. They're like, wait, you can do that in this game? It's like, yes. Yes, you can. So it's like I typically try my best to not sleep on a game unless I'm able to give it a chance if it catches my interest, right? So it's like this was one of those cases where I was interested anyway because I'm into Kunio Kun and the River City games as it is. The aesthetic also caught my attention, and then I actually like started playing it, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's something here. I can kind of feel it. And then I just really went in, and it was like it just got more and more fun. So yeah, it pretty much is. It's like there's a lot of fighting game related stuff in there, and it's actually kind of nutty. You gotta dig it out, but it's there, and I am 100% there for that. Uh, It's like if we're talking about like my top beat 'em ups, as of right now, it's River City Girls in first, Streets of Rage 4 right behind that, and Fight and Rage right under Streets of Rage 4. Like those three are like the best to me because there's so much that you can dig out in all of those games. There's loads of exploration to be had. Each game has it in its own way, and it just really does favors to people that like to lab stuff and like dig into nuances. It's really fun because you get lost. It gets beyond that point of trying to like just beat the game or play the game in an efficient manner. Now you end up trying to figure out how can I bend this part of the system to my will? How can I, do this as stylishly as possible? Things like that. And, if that's the kind of person you are, you can easily get lost in that. And it's fun. It is very fun. You are a lab kind of being. Yeah, well, you would enjoy it. I mean, if you enjoyed watching it, I would recommend like grabbing it up if you ever see it. Like if you're ever just able to afford it, because it's like I think it's like still 2025 somewhere around there. Um, so like if you're ever able, it's like I would definitely recommend. It's good. It's very good. So if you enjoy watching anybody like play it and beat 'em ups are your thing, heavy recommendation. Right. So that's a thing. See, you spend pretty much all your time in fighting games and such in the lab. Well, yeah, it would be right up your alley. Right up your alley, 100%. In that case, more and more stuff to dig. Never played beat 'em ups, but you think River City Girls would be your first? Yeah, that's it. Recommendation there is there. It's fun. It's a good one. You if you ever do decide to get it, make sure you let me know. I will point you towards my tutorials for the game so that as you progress, you can have an understanding of like certain things that you can do in the system that the game does not tell you about. Admittedly, because some of the stuff is like, it does relate to bugs and glitches that they didn't intend. Like some of the jump cancel stuff I was doing before. That's actively a bug that they opted not to fix. I was happy about that because it led to more stylish stuff, and it's just like, wait. They know this is a bug and there's patches coming. Please don't fix this thing, because if you fix this thing, you're gonna take away some of our fun. And they're like, you know what? No, we'll leave it in. There's so many games we're gonna jump to the lab with again now that you have a ton of time on your hands and you've finally been able to enjoy games again. Ah, so you have a backlog, is what you're saying. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with having a backlog. I got one of those. I want to say about 25% of my backlog is RPGs. I still have to finish Yakuza Like a Dragon. I was gifted Saga Frontier. Yeah, Saga Frontier Remastered as like a birthday present. I gotta get on that. I'm like actively pushed to finish that one. I stopped playing Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles a long time back, mainly because I don't have anybody to play it with. um, adore the heck out of that game, but it it's very long-winded if you're going at that one alone. So it's just like, I'm fine. Let's see, 4 more days for one of the best fighters ever. Yep, Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown. Let's see, devs like that leave the fun bugs in deserve to be rejoiced. Exactly. Way Forward could have been like, this is a bug, we didn't intend for it, let's take it out. They could have been like that, but they were like, nah, let's leave this in. Because A, it doesn't break the game, and B, it's actually really cool. People are having fun with it. It makes people have more fun with our game. So we don't have any reason to take it out. And I'm like, yay, hey, thank you. Speaking of Virtua Fighter, that has been a divisive topic ever since people came to realize that the game's not going to have rollback. And I'm like, why is it a divisive thing? I don't understand. Like, you don't even know how the online is going to be. It's not like you can't have delay based netcode and have it be good. You know, like, you definitely can have good delay based netcode. There's just going to be the typical issue of the further away you are from someone, you know, the harder it is to have a solid connection. It's going to be that much more important for both the players to A, have good connections, and B, be wired as opposed to wireless. Those are important things, and those need to be taken into account. I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, rollback isn't needed. Like, if they could have given it rollback, I would have 100% been like, yeah, no, why didn't you do this? Right? But it's not like Sega's online infrastructure has ever been like super bad. Let's see. People are burnt out from it because 99% of games that use delay are pretty bad. The problem is the games out now have terrible delay-based netcode, like horrible. Yeah, and I get that 100%, right? And it does leave a bad like bit of stigma behind that, right? But again, it's one of those things where you have to wait and see. You do, because SEGA was using delay-based netcode as far back as vanilla Virtua Fighter 5. They used it for vanilla Virtua Fighter 5. They used it for Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown, their Virtual On games, a lot of the racing games they released. And for many of those, they had legitimately some of the best netcode you could see, despite it being delay based. Like, it's to the point that up to very recently, there were still people doing tournaments for Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown. Mind, that game was made back in 2012. And they're still doing like tournaments to this day. And I think that's worth noting, right? So if they're going to go with an improved version of that same infrastructure, I think the online is going to be fine. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's going to be amazing. We have to wait and see. But Sega's got a pretty decent track record with stuff when it comes to online and their management. Back in that time frame, the internet wasn't as congested as it is now. Sure. But I mean, at the same time, it's not like, you know, the internet in general being as congested would have like a gigantic impact when it comes down to the servers for the games in particular and how many players are on those servers. You know, if, for example, freaking Strive has a beta and they're like, hey, we want everybody to get in on this beta as quickly as possible. We want as many people in on this beta as quickly as possible. We get loads and loads and loads of people, and that beta crashes because it can't handle the load, or it starts impacting things with how the online runs because there were more people than they expected, which has happened with some betas before. That is a thing to take into account. And one of the things with Virtua Fighter that is sad but true is that your player base for Virtua Fighter isn't going to necessarily be overly massive. It's never been a series that has actually pulled a massive amount of attention. a massive amount of like, pull in regards to the fan base, the player base, stuff like that. We're going to end up, as per usual, having things whittled down to people that are legitimately in to play the game. The old heads, the new people that want to stick around and learn, and the virtual fighter vets in general. And then that's just gonna kind of be it. It's like the first couple of months where it's free for PS Plus and PS Now, we're going to get that influx of people that are going to be trying it just because it's new. And that right there will be the litmus test for how effective overall the online can be. Because of the fact that, again, there's going to be, even Maximilian said, it's going, there are going to be more people playing Virtua Fighter in these first couple of months than there ever have been in any prior version at any point in time. And that's something that 100% needs to be taken into account. Same thing happened for Final Showdown, had more on launch but dropped off after a few months. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know? But with that said, like, if you're going to take the overall volume of players into account, then that if that like has like as big an impact as that would imply, that would in turn mean for the people that are actually going to stick with Virtua Fighter, if the online's good, it's going to stay good. Because we already know what's going to happen. There are going to be people that are going to stick for it for like maybe a day or two, and then they'll be done. These first 2 months are going to see people try it because it's free. They're going to shuffle off and go back to whatever game they mainly play. And that'll be that. That'll be that. People are going to move on. Do I hope that it actually does like pick up a solid player base from this? Yes. 100%. I would love to see it. It would be cool. Virtua Fighter deserves it. But I don't expect it. And that's unfortunate. Right, like, my thing is, like, I've seen people, like, outright get attacked just because they voiced the concept that, hey, just because the online is delay based doesn't mean we should dump on it immediately. And that is exactly what some people are doing. They're just like, it's delay based, it's not rollback. Well, I was gonna play it, but not now. We have literally lost chunks of potential players simply because of that coming out. And that is actively a shame, but it's also understandable to a point because of what rollback net play means in the grand scheme of things. It's one of those things where it's like you're still in a situation of wait and see what the online's actually like. If it's bad, at that point, 100%, go nuts. Hey, nobody can say anything otherwise at that point. But if it's good, then hey, Yeah, I've heard that it's built off the previous release's legacy code. I've heard. Um, I think it would be foolish to assume that they didn't at least try to make some improvements to that coding. I think that's something to keep in mind, for one thing. Second of all, let's actually keep in mind, yet again, that it was not bad at all. Like, Sega has a very good track record, even with their delay based netcode stuff. Like, they have a very good track record with stuff like that. And the case in point is, even up to this year, people were still holding online tournaments for stuff that Sega's, like, Sega's had, like Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown and stuff. Still online tournaments for that. Mhm. Yeah. Yes, it was better than Street Fighter 4's net. It was better than a lot of games in netcode. And it's like, sure, you still had the issue of, like I said earlier, like if you ran into someone who had bad netcode, a bad connection, and they weren't wired on top of that, you could get those matches that were absolutely unplayable. That's just the nature of things. Heck, that happens even if you have rollback. Rollback doesn't keep that from happening. But that being said, what it does do is, if both people have at least okay connections, it will 100% do its best to make sure that everything works up to par. The only problem was it wasn't as expansive as Arc System's netcode with lobby options, etc., etc. Yeah, yeah, more like a flaw, like you said. Yeah, that is true. Um, but yeah, Arxis was weird about it because, okay, so Arxis, I have always had bones to pick about Arxis's netcode and netplay and their options and stuff, right? Um, they have this weird thing, Arxis does, where connecting to people is never a problem. I don't care how iffy someone's connection is, whether they're wired or not. Arxis is like, you can connect to anyone, right? That's Arxis's thing. But once you connect, the connection itself, like the quality of the connection, is up in the air. It's like the concept of karma itself is flipping a coin and deciding the connection for both people. And it's nutty, right? And that's always been Arxis's thing. And I don't understand. I don't understand it. We all have bones to pick because it sucks. See, no, here's the thing. I have bones to pick because, like, the people that I've played with on, like, Arxis's connections in various games, I've had decent connections and stuff with. But I have also heard ghost stories. I have heard ghost stories and seen things that you would not believe. And it is, from everything I've seen and heard, it's rough. It's rough. So I know other people have, like, actual, like, Mortal Kombat style skeletons with, like, multiple legs and whatnot to pick. Not just bones, just the whole thing. How the box advertises, quote, good net code. And depending on the release, that might be an oof. Let's see, IMO, as long as you're above NRS and Capcom netcode, you can't be that bad, right? NRS is a weird one because depending on the game, their netcode can be pretty solid. Um, Half of their releases have really bad netcode. The other half, really good netcode. And it varies really hard. Like, if anyone remembers Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 on the Xbox 360 in particular, I don't know what wizardry they pulled with Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 on the Xbox 360, but that game's netcode was immaculate. Really, really good. The only real issue it had was connecting to certain people. But if you could connect and stay connected, it was super solid. And I'm like, what is this? What did you do with this? Let's see. NRS netcode for games has been relatively great since MK9, since they revamped her rollback. Once I see teleport into lag, I'm like, praise Ed. MK9 has delay based online. Yeah, it does. But like, I've heard varying stories about MK9's netcode. I've heard some people say it was really good. I've heard others say it's not so great. My personal experience with MKX's netcode in particular was that it wasn't great. It wasn't the worst that I've experienced in regards to netcode from my experience, but it wasn't great. I was not satisfied with that. So that's a thing. Whereas MK11's netcode, from my personal experience, really, really good. Like, I don't know what they're doing with MK11 for their netcode. I imagine it's rollback. It's really good. It is? Okay. Oh, okay, huh. I must have missed that boat then. Ah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Hmm. Okay, huh. Alright, that makes sense. Hmm. Let's see. Delay base works at its best when they're strong. They have strong and multiple based servers, and the games that specialize in it, that is shooters. I think that varies depending on the company and their infrastructure for online, because Sega has had very solid online for Virtua Fighter, Virtual On, um, the Sonic racing games, both of them, like Sega Sonic All Stars Racing and All Stars Racing Transformed. Well, actually, and Team Sonic Racing. All of those had really strong online, with, again, the main thing being, can you connect with people? Like, actually connecting is the issue. But if you can get connected and get into a game, you're not going to experience any issues, really. Let's see, they retrofitted rollback into MKX and it was built into MK11 from day one. Yeah, that's what my roommate was just saying. Was just saying they went back and fixed stuff for MKX, and then from there they used that for MK11 and moved forward with it. Yeah, like I said, I don't know what wizardry Sega was on even like back in the day, but their stuff was really, really solid. So I'm in the boat of, let's wait and see what the online is actually like first. And if it's bad, then yeah, people can go nuts. But until then, like we wait and see. We wait and see because it's not like Sega doesn't have a solid track record. Like more than that, I'm happy to finally have Virtua Fighter back on like a current day console that you don't have to buy another game to play it on. Like let's put that out there. We like people are bugging over the concept that hey, Virtual Fighter players are getting all hype and stuff for what is essentially a re-release. It's like, first of all, chances are high there's gonna be balance changes, so that's something to take into account. Uh, hold up, let's see. Agree. Once you get into the server, I have good play peer-to-peer connection. Sega can be magical. Generally have faith in them because they seem to have more quality control in the last couple of years. Let's see, yeah, well, shooters need that many servers to run if you compare how many people play Call of Duty or Fortnite compared to any fighting game. I mean, when you have servers in shooting games that constantly have to support like 30 people plus, right? That's kind of a thing. So yeah, that is a solid point. um, yeah, no, yeah. Um, again, one of the first points with Ultimate Showdown is that very high chance there's gonna be balance changes. They're not. I feel like they're not going to go out of their way to remake the game on in the Dragon engine that they used to create the Yakuza series. They wouldn't go to that kind of effort and then not give balance changes across the cast. I feel like they would actively try to, do that kind of thing, especially considering they are wanting to get the game into the hands of as many people as possible at once. So that's step one. Step two, of course, is again them using the Dragon engine to make it. That's actually really big. People want to shuffle that under the rug because Ryuga Gotoku Studios, they work through Sega with Sega. That's their subsidiary. That's their thing, right? And people want to be like, well, yeah, of course they could do that. They work, that's a Sega thing. But you have to imagine the amount of work, the manpower necessary, and the time it takes, especially in this pandemic nonsense, to be able to take a game like that and not simply upscale it, but to create all kinds of like new assets and build on a lot of things from the ground up the way that they did. It's actually a massive visual improvement. They didn't stop there. There's new UI stuff, there's new stages, there's new music, right? For all intents and purposes, like the game has been brought up to the standards of a current day 3D fighter. And that's a lot of work to consider, which lets you know that they 100% want to get this into as many people's hands as possible to try to gauge interest. And as dodgy as some of their decisions about it are, they're actually probably going about it the best way that they can. Well, on the pandemic thing, Sega is based in Japan, right? There is Sega Japan and Sega of America, and their branches are handled very differently. It is part of why like Virtual Fighter is called Virtual Fighter Esports over in Japan, and over here and in some other places, it's being called Ultimate Showdown. Over there, they are actually going to have like all kinds of tournaments and stuff that they are like scheduling like a couple like over the stretch of a couple of years, in fact. So they're doing stuff with it like crazy over there. None of that's planned over here though, which lets you know that they're aware that, a fan base would need to be built over here, interest would need to be built over here. Let's see. On the pandemic thing, Sega is based in Japan, because if so, they haven't had COVID related issues for a long while. Funny thing, they just recently extended their state of emergency specifically because of COVID. Like, this was super recent. The certain areas are going right back on lockdown. So, it's not like it just went away. They are still going through stuff. Yes, yes, they are. Yep. Yeah, it's a thing. It's unfortunate. It sucks. Let's see. I think they're putting their best foot forward. Sega IMO is trying to figure out where to push their company for games. Though they have Sonic, Yakuza, and Judgment, the Holy Three right now, they want to try more properties to see what other IPs can raise up their portfolio. Streets of Rage 4 was a hit for them, though there are other factors to that as well. Yeah, 100%. When Sega said a couple of years back that they were going to restructure things in order to bring forward more IPs and stuff like that and do more in regards to creating, more and better games, they have not been resting on their laurels. Quality has been shifting depending on the game, sure, but they have definitely been putting in work to, pump out a lot of stuff for various IPs over the past few years, and they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do. It's very notable, extremely noteworthy, something that should be taken into account. Yeah, PSO2 as well. PSO2 is another big thing. Let's see, Japan's had a hard time getting vaccine shipments, and they're still working on getting the elderly vaccinated. Yep, we're going through that over here too. So, let's see. And PSO2 for the West has to be a cult hit, and there's been some hype for PSO2 New Genesis. PSO2 for the West is a weird one because it wasn't like the West didn't want PSO2, they just didn't bring it over here. Like, we had to fight the capture boss if we wanted to play. We had to jump through flaming hoops that had lions on the other side that were wearing spiked armor, you know, and had laser eyes. We had to go through work to play PSO2 until eventually they just said, we'll start bringing it out on some more stuff. And even then, we still didn't officially get it in the States until they finally cut that deal with Microsoft. Right. Yep, fans have been waiting for 8 years, yes. So, I was like, to be fair, there's a lot of things that go into whether or not they could have actually brought it over here. Um, because one thing to keep in mind about PSO2 is there is a massive amount of like crossover stuff that goes into PSO2. absolutely massive. So there's a ton of licensing that would end up like being a thing if they were to try to bring it over here and keep the vast majority of that stuff they ended up getting in the Japanese version of the game. And the longer that things stayed over there, the more stuff they ended up getting and crossing over with. So that's more licensing that they would have to try to work out. And we're seeing that even now with the current version of PSO2 because we're still getting stuff in the US version to gradually catch us up to where they are. And even then, we're just not going to get everything, right? Which honestly, I believe that's part of why they're doing what they're doing with New Genesis, so that everyone can start on a semi even playing field of sorts. And if that's part of what their agenda is with that, then I can respect it. But it's also just, a spotty thing to try to consider. Especially for the people that have put in like loads and loads of time. Sega of America tried to push out as much as they could. Let's see. We have up to, I believe they call it episode 6. You have no idea how far PSO2 JP is. I believe they're at episode 6 as well, but don't quote me on that. I would have to double check. It's been a very long time since I've played Japanese PSO2. Still, though, that's a lot of content. Yes, it is. Yes, it very much is. And the boys at Sega of America are working for sure. Yeah, they're doing what they can. Like I said, I think that's something that, just needs to be taken into account. Because even outside of PSO2, they're still pumping out content, they're pumping out games. They're doing what they said they were going to do with the restructuring and everything like that, so that they could get out more games and stuff. So it's like, yeah, no, please, people, have patience and pay attention to what's happening, because Sega's trying right now. We would have had more, most likely, if COVID didn't throw a wrench in everyone's backyard. They didn't throw a wrench into the backyard. They paperboy tossed that wrench into people's windows. Just rolled past on a bicycle and chucked it. Like, that's where we were. Speaking of, that's a game that needs a re-release. We need a modern day remake on Paperboy. I would legitimately wonder what genre that would fall under. You can't call it a racing game because you're the only one like riding a bike. There's enough monsters and stuff trying to kill you to classify it as horror. Let's see. The only thing you want Sega to do is revive some of their classic RPGs like Skies of Arcadia or the Valkyrie series. But you totally understand because RPGs are just a niche of a niche. That depends on where you are. That 100% depends on where you are. Because, just as an example, if you're over in Japan and you're talking about the Tales of series, there are literal shops in Japan that sell nothing but Tales of paraphernalia. Same for the Final Fantasy series. They also have literal like events for this stuff, like actual like conventions and parties and things like that, specifically for these series to celebrate those series over in Japan. Like they are massive. It is an actual phenomenon there. Whereas over here, RPGs are like, depending on the RPG, we're lucky to get merchandise for it. Whereas some others, it's like, okay, this thing's coming out. It's a big one. It's like Final Fantasy, which Final Fantasy is actually really big over here. They can afford and risk making, a bit of merchandise for it and not feel bad about it. But it's not going to be anywhere near the amount of stuff that Japan gets for that kind of stuff at all. Yeah, RPGs are way more mainstream today than they've been in the past 20 years. They are. But there's still a massive difference between how they're perceived in Japan compared to how they're perceived over here. In America, it varies. Like, a lot of people played, for example, Tales of Symphonia or Vesperia, but the sales numbers for Xillia or Berseria never got those numbers. No, they didn't. But Berseria is actually a million seller, and it did it in less time than Vesperia did. That's actually noteworthy. It didn't take Berseria getting, multiple versions over a number of years, like some games did. Yeah, like, I wish, 100% wish that, you know, RPGs could get even half as big over here as they are in Japan. Because Japan gets some really cool stuff off the back of that. They really do. Let's see. True, true. Feel that RPGs in terms of sales numbers varies. Like in Japan could be wrong. Dragon Quest series is just crap over there. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Dragon Quest in Japan is actually massive, like huge, huge. It is the RPG over there. And that's saying a lot considering how big Final Fantasy is. That's why there's like 13 of them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But again, same can be said for Final Fantasy and Tales of. People can't count how many Tales of games there are because they don't number their titles. All the Tales of games are just titles. But you can go and count Tales of, and there might be more Tales of titles than Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest titles. And I guarantee you that a vast reason for that is the success that the series sees in Japan. Let's see. We have Dragon Quest X online, and it was so popular they're making a Dragon Quest X offline version. Yeah. To say how big RPGs are in Japan, Final Fantasy VII was the game that killed the Saturn's 2-year sales lead by itself. Yes, yes, it was. Yeah, when a game being released can 100% eclipse the sales of a system because it's being released as the killer app for another new system, that is a lot of influence. That's a lot of influence. And that's 100% something to be considered, especially since over in Japan, the Saturn was nowhere near failing. So, yeah, there's just stuff for sure to take into account. And I think it would be cool, honestly, to be able to have that kind of push for RPGs over here, but I wouldn't expect it anytime soon. Beat the PS1 2 years in a row in sales. That's no easy feat, even with its higher price tag. Yep, yep, exactly. In any case, let's see who's doing what right now. My friend Rika is currently playing Street Fighter 5. So, I am going to kick up a raid and drag you all over there to her stream. Thanks to the people that I got follows from. That's much appreciated. Thank you all for tuning in, watching the stream, hanging out and talking after the fact. Now Nikki, hopefully, if and when you get River City Girls, you enjoy it. Very fun game. Yeah, yeah. That's about it though. Yeah, no problem. Kyo and Astro and now Neki and Selly. No problem. Like I said, appreciate y'all watching, hanging out and stuff. But for now, let's get this raid going. Let's see. Click and click. Let's bring our tiny little RPG party over to Rika's Street Fighter 5 nonsense. Everybody, take it easy and have a good night.